Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of East Cambs District Council Planning Committee. I hope you find it useful and interesting for members of the public, especially those if they're here for the first time. First of all, I'd ask Tracy Cooper to read out the fire safety announcement, please.
If the fire alarm sounds, can you please make your way out of the building via the
Thank you. And now we move to apologies and substitutions. Have you got any apologies?
Sorry, Chairman, I keep forgetting to put my microphone on. We have apologies from Councillor David Brown and Councillor Sue Austin.
And have you any substitutes?
I haven't been notified of any.
Okay. And the minutes, we have the minutes of our meeting on the 1st of March, and have any members got any comments or any comments to make about them, and any reason why I shouldn't sign them off as being a complete record? No, so I will sign that. Yes. And we now go, sorry, I've got the order a little bit muddled up, but we go to item 2 now, declaration of interest. Any members got a declaration of interest? Okay, we haven't. So we then skip the minutes, which was item 3, and we go to chairman's announcements. This is the last meeting to be held in this administration in this building because of the elections that are on early in May. We will be holding what is effectively the May meeting. Will be held on the 26th of April, and it will be held at St Mary's Church Hall, which is the building attached to St Mary's Church. The timings are planned to be the same, and if there are any alterations, then they will be announced when the agenda is announced. So this is the last one here, but there's one more in this administration on the 26th of April, and that's at St Mary's Church Hall. I think that's, we also have Anne James has left the council after 5 years, and that's about a sort of length of time that I've been involved with planning, and I've found her to be a very efficient, hardworking and an amusing colleague, and I wish her well, and I'm sure all of us on the committee wish her well. And so now we move on to item number 5, and if we can have the officers' report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 5 concerns a variation to the originally approved outline application under reference 17-00757 ESO, and that's residential development of up to 680 dwellings and associated infrastructure. The application site is shown on the screen outlined in red. There's an aerial view of the site. And for context a bit later on, there is also the approved phasing plan. The proposed development concerns largely alterations to the access and associated footpath approved under the outline, as shown on the screen. The drawing is a technical drawing, but largely the footpath shown in the light blue colour to the north of the carriageway is the main focus of the application. It largely concerns the removal of the approved footpath along Grange Lane, immediately adjoining the carriageway, in favour for a alternative footpath to the north of the ditch which runs along the site frontage, as shown in light blue. Members are advised that this application is linked to agenda item number 6, which is the variation of the reserved matters, which was pursuant to the outline under variation under agenda item 5. So the determination upon the outline variation in front of you is very much intrinsic to the later consideration of the reserve matters. The application has been taken to planning committee on the basis of its concerns and outline over 50 dwellings and previous determination at planning committee. It is also considered necessary given that the proposed amendments put forward here today concern a matter that members previously raised concern over, this largely being related to bus contributions. The slide on the screen shows the as approved access and footpath arrangement, just showing some context there for the footpath that was agreed across immediately adjoining the carriageway along Grange Lane. Some site photos just to illustrate the access. This is looking from Yeoman's Way. And this is the currently in situ shared pedestrian and cycle path that is set to the north of the ditch, as you can see in the right hand side there. Some further context looking towards the main vehicular access and the ditch itself. This is the shared path where it adjoins the main development, and the temporary show home parking is shown in the right hand photo. This is the site's it's not the site's junction. It is the point at which the proposed footpath will be extending towards the Cannon Kirk development at Yeoman's Way. Not currently completed, but part of the proposals. Members will see the main considerations on the screen. As set out in detail in the committee report, there is a lot of history which underpins the application before members today, and I will not be going into it in full detail, but I hope to provide a summary of the applications that have gone forward to reach this point. So the outline was granted in 2017, and two conditions of that outline were the provision of the footpath along Grange Lane, which was a purely pedestrian footpath, as well as a changing in the speed limits along Grange Lane. This was all predicated upon the provision of a footpath immediately adjoining the carriageway, and indeed upon the basis of which the traffic regulation order has been granted. Later, following the approval, there was a non-material amendment granted to the outline. This was to widen the vehicular access to the site marginally to allow effectively 2 buses to pass. As part of the outline, it's important to note that condition 6 imposed the requirement of a design code. This design code would go forward to underpin the subsequently approved reserve matters application and any future reserve matters application. Importantly, the design code sets out mandatory as well as advisory elements. This is to give certainty across all parties. The design code included the provision of a very specific internal spine road arrangement. This was to allow buses to enter the site and to pass, as well as the requirement for the provision of a bus turning arrangement within the site itself. The later reserve matters was granted upon the basis that it complied with the design code, and it was specifically condition 15 imposed the requirement of this bus turning loop or turning arrangement to come forward either under a separate reserve matters application or as a discharge condition itself. Moving on towards the present day, the reason for the application being put forward is during investigation works on site, the ditch itself posed a number of kind of technical constraints. Whilst the footpath is technically feasible across the site frontage, it would obviously come at quite a high engineering cost. This is something the applicant has noted, as well as the Local Highways Authority, and the applicant has demonstrated that a number of other options were exhausted to consider the delivery of the footpath, and ultimately resulted in the application put forward to members today. So moving on to the assessment of the development proposals, then the main consideration here is the provision of pedestrian and cycle access. The footpath, the shared path, provided at the site and currently in situ, albeit not fully constructed to how it should be, and as is indeed proposed, still provides a main connection point into the development and Littleport, if fully constructed and adopted by the Local Highways Authority. It would provide a safe and accessible connection to Littleport and the services. This is predicated upon a number of requirements established by the local highways authority, namely the provision of boundary fencing, which have been submitted to prevent falls into the ditch, and a maximum occupation condition being imposed upon the variation to limit the amount of dwellings occupied within the development site without this kind of vital infrastructure being provided. So members will be able to see that in the report and in the draft condition list. It is important to note that no significant highway safety concerns have been raised by the Highways Authority on the basis of the loss of the footpath along Grange Lane. And it is on this basis that the development proposal is considered to still be compliant with the objectives of Policy Com 7 and Lit 2 of the East Cambs local plan, as well as the NPPF. Another main consideration is the bus service provision within the site. And as mentioned at the beginning, this was a consideration of members under the main considerations of the outline application. The loss of the footpath along Grange Lane would result in the loss of an opportunity for a bus stop along that particular section of Grange Lane. However, this matter wasn't specifically considered at the outline stage, and the bus contribution itself secured as part of the outline application relates to bus service provision within the site. It's not considered that the loss of the footpath along Grange Lane necessarily prevents bus operators from entering the site, and this is more of a matter for the reserve matters application. So on that basis, the application is still considered to comply with the overall objectives of the local plan and the NPPF in terms of providing sustainable opportunities for sustainable transport. Regarding the other matters, the character and appearance of the footpath, it would be less visually intrusive than the footpath originally approved. Notwithstanding, it would still be visible and it would still be an expected urbanising feature of major development schemes. So very limited harm is found with that particular element of the development. Landscaping and ecology. Members will be aware that hedging was removed along Grange Lane to facilitate the construction of the previously approved footpath immediately adjoining the carriageway. This was also removed to facilitate carriageway widening as well as other highway works and ditch realignment. But it is considered the loss of the hedging is considered to be justified on the basis of replacement planting being secured under the reserve matters application. And with regards to drainage and flooding, there have been no significant concerns raised by statutory consultees, and the proposals would not affect the ditch or its drainage. So it's on that basis that the proposed development is considered to support the delivery of a high quality development proposal. The alternative shared path proposed would not jeopardise the ability of the scheme to deliver safe and accessible links to Littleport, and nor does it directly prevent the ability of the site to accommodate a diverted bus route into the development itself. On that basis, it's considered that development is acceptable in accordance with the policies of the East Cambridgeshire Local Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework, and is put forward with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much, Holly. Clearly, you put a lot of effort into this, and thank you. Now we have a speakers, and the first one is Rebecca Smith, Senior Planner, Vestry House Building. You have 5 minutes. If you could turn your microphone on, and when you're comfortable, away you go.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I said, I'm a Senior Planner at Vestry Homes. We are the developer on site and the applicant for this particular application. The application we submitted back in November to gain approval for an alternative pedestrian access provision along Grange Lane for our development sites. As the officer set out in her report, unfortunately, when we commenced construction of the access works along Grange Lane, it came to light that between our ground workers and the highway inspector to approve the works, that the approved designs were not technically feasible in terms of where the position of the widened carriageway, the proposed 2-metre footway and the realigned drainage ditch all needed to fit together. Also, should add by this time, we'd already been on site for 6 months. So because we'd had to wait for road space and for the school holidays to undertake the access works on Grange Lane, it meant we'd already gone ahead with a lot of significant infrastructure into that part of Grange Lane. So we had to put in a new rising gas main, HV cables. We also made considerable progress on the plots, the dwellings fronting Grange Lane as well. So a bit of an unfortunate set of circumstances. But as soon as we were aware of the issue, we liaised with the local highway authority, the local drainage authorities to come up with the best solution, which is proportionate to the situation that we find ourselves in. And in that regards, we proposing that we no longer provide that 2-metre footway directly adjacent the carriageway, but what we will do is we will build the 3-metre cycle footway to an adoptable standard, and that will form part of a revised 278 agreement with the local highway authority to ensure that that is an adoptable, safe and convenient pedestrian access for our residents at our site. I suppose just briefly to add in terms of the bus stop provision, as the developers, we will have ongoing dialogue with officers, with the local highway authority and with the bus operator as we get closer to the time in which we could feasibly get a bus service potentially to operate on the site. We've built the site that has an internal spine road for the bus stop. We're going to put a bus lay-by in by the community centre, and it's very much our intentions to work with everyone to make sure we can get a bus service in and out of the site. I suppose just hopefully members recognise that we have worked all necessary parties. We've come up with a solution which was realistically the only alternative. And for us to get this implemented, it is predicated on us securing this planning permission so we can progress with the 278 technical approval work to get the 3-metre footway connection all the way up into the Canonkirk site delivered. I think that's all I have to say, but I will try and answer any questions members might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. Obviously, you've mentioned you're making up to adoptable standard. Are you actually going to apply for it to be adopted?
Sorry.
Are you going to apply to the county for it to actually be adopted? I understand.
Yeah. So we've already got, we've done as far as we can working with the development management team, the Section 278 team at Highways. So they've got hopefully our revised plans that might get the planning permission today, so we can crack on, revise that 278 technical improvement legal agreement, and then that will become that 3-metre footway cycleway will be adopted. And that's why it's being built to adoptable standards, and it's got lighting along it as well now.
I was just checking because I think you have to apply for it to be adopted rather than they wouldn't actually take it on, won't they? That was all.
Yeah, so I mean, we've worked very closely with Shane Luck, the dedicated highways engineer, on this solution. It's
Okay.
our
No, that's fine.
intention
As long as it's
adopted.
going to be adopted, it's just, I know it takes a small
Yeah.
contribution and things, and if it doesn't get done, it just sits there with
No,
not ever getting done. Thank you.
Christine Ambrose Smith.
Thank you. I know bus service provision isn't set in stone yet. Will there be space available at relatively suitable places for a bus stop and bus shelters? And will you be providing those bus shelters?
yeah, so under our first reserve matters application that covered the main spine road into development, now called Whitworth Way, there is, we got agreed with the local highway authority and officers for lay-by. So that's the infrastructure for that part of the site. What is still obviously open to discussion is the bus turning loop area and the infrastructure, the lay-by and bus stop up at the community hub area. So when we go on to our next phase and our next reserve matters for this site, then that will all be obviously under discussion again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you. I'm surprised that a major developer like you got it wrong in the planning stage. How did this come about? Well, I mean, you put forward a plan and you now see it's not workable. I mean, is this a first off or?
I can't possibly comment these things had. I'm not trying to pass the buck, but we weren't involved with the outline planning stage and the initial access drawings. These things happen. It does happen more frequently that things get designed to the best of the ability of our civil engineers, and different things happen on site or things. And we're just trying our best now to rectify, which was an unfortunate situation.
Yes, I'd just like to ask you something. It's immensely trivial. But when I was looking at this path today, one of the lampposts was actually in the cycleway. Only by a few inches, but it just has got, I'm going to be biking down there and I'm going to hit this. And I would just like your assurance that there won't be any street lights which are planted in the cycleway.
Okay, so from
They
my
are at the moment.
understanding,
There is one at the moment.
on the back edge of that pathway. All I can say on that is the design's obviously going to go through or be technically approved and then form part of the 278 legal agreement with County Highways in terms of their highway development management team and their street lighting team commenting on it. So whatever that arrangement is suitable for it to be a shared foot cycleway.
But there's a lamppost in the tarmac.
Yeah, I think they are normally on the back edge. And
Well,
that's all from
to
I'm
me,
not an
it would
engineer,
be-
sorry.
It would be heartbreaking if I turn up there in 2 years' time and it's still there. I'm sure your engineering department can manage something better.
I
than
will
that.
definitely pass on the comment and
Okay,
see.
thank you very much indeed. And now we have councillor Stubbs.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just two little questions. Touched on the bus stop. And I know from parish councils, I know you weren't specific about what will be offered, is depending on what is agreed, but with bus stops this day and age, the parish councils end up having to pay a lot of money to put the solar powered display. So help residents with that, and obviously that comes out of their budgets. Is that something you can commit to actually including in the design as well? This is probably a small amount for you guys, but a large amount for a parish council.
Yeah, I mean, I know under the Section 106 legal agreement, there's a bus contribution. Again, I wasn't, I don't know what that precise 200 and something K figure includes, but that is to give the bus operator money to divert, I believe, their service into our site and for us to provide some of the infrastructure on site. So it's not being requested for us to have bus
Can I
shelters.
request it now so that then maybe?
I mean, there's
the
something I
officer-
can take on board, but from a planning perspective, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's the right place.
Yes. If that's right, for you Chair.
What was the resolution of that?
Thank you. Sorry if I can go through you, Chair. With regards to Rebecca is correct. There is a contribution secured under the outline, which is specifically for infrastructure to support an operator going into the site. So feasibly, that could include and running costs. Yes, sorry, infrastructure and running costs to for things like bus stops. So it shouldn't necessarily fall to the parish. I will just say at this stage, at the moment, item 5 is concerning the outline. So specific technical details of kind of internal to the site would really be a reserve matters element. So obviously it can be a consideration. I'm just suggesting that maybe it's not under this item.
Thank you, Holly. It's just little things like that always make the difference, because it would come out of the parish council's pockets otherwise. My second question, I think this is the right place to say, if not, I'm sure Holly will tell me. You know, when we looked at the width of the cycle post dual path, there was, because obviously it hadn't been designed for that, there was a big chunk of it narrower because there's a flower bed. Is that something that's definitely going to be included in the widening of that path? It looks nice, but obviously it's not going to be practical for
Yeah, that part of particular infrastructure was put in for some temporary parking to service our sales centre. So when it comes to actually being fully in operational, that path will be reinstated to the 3 meters. I mean, if it causes any issues, then we can review that. I'm sure officers will raise it.
Thank you very much.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just a little matter of concern. The main concern is the chairman on his cycle. I'd rather you didn't. Rebecca, I do have a serious question. I think what you've done looks very smart, and the testimony to you all for what you've done there looks very good indeed. I'm concerned about the pathway to Yeoman's Way, and at that end, it's a dogleg sort of thing. Is there any way you can make that better? Could we have it up, please, Holly? See that monstrosity there? You've come right to the edge of the road with the path, right to the edge of the road, right to that roundabout. Is there any way you could drop that back a few meters to go straight across?
So
As you,
there's a few challenges in that location.
yes, I know, I saw them. So, but
In terms
that
of
was you're the
also another third party ownership in that location. We are in communication with Cannon Kirks because obviously to fully implement that, we do need their consent. That footway that goes all the way up into Yeoman's Way
Yeah.
will form part of, I can't remember if it's the 278 or the section 38 technical agreement with highways with Cannon Kirk. So making sure we can deliver it all, and that's always been the proposed design. that's
yes,
been
I understand
approved.
because you will come straight down, but you've made such a good job, a very good job of this new stuff that I actually cannot vote when it comes to voting. I will not be able to vote for this application, I'm afraid. If you can't do something better than that, that's where I'm going. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think that's it. Rebecca, you can go and
Thank
sit
you.
down now. Thank you for your help. We now move on to, has we got any comments from the officer?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if I just pick up on the last immediate point raised by Councillor Ambrose Smith, the arrangement you show that is shown here is very much actually what we've already approved under the outline and reserve matters. So I would advise to keep that into consideration. This isn't any different to what cyclists and pedestrians would have been taking. It's the same line of travel and it's the same infrastructure being provided. So just like to make that point clear, it really is a specification upgrade really for this shared path, and evidently the removal of the pedestrian footpath to the south. Another couple of points, Councillor Jones raised the adoption. That is actually the adoption of this shared path that is actually secured by the condition 26. It does actually require it to be constructed to adoptable standards. So it's just another element there to consider, that there is a kind of a condition requirement there. And as already mentioned, with regards to kind of the bus stop elements, we are considering the outline at the moment, which is largely focused upon the access and footpath. So more technical elements would be better placed for consideration under the reserve matters variation.
Okay, members, have you any questions for Holly? No? Okay, well, we then go, I have, and it's just, I may have missed it, but when we were standing on the cycle path and we were looking at the ditch, am I right in thinking you did say there was going to be a fence between the two and it was going to be wooden, and I didn't, and roughly how high would it be?
If you just bear with me, Chair, I'll just dig out the plan. Yes, so it's post and rail fencing proposed along the northern edge of the ditch, and it'll be approximately 1.2 meters high. So I apologize, I don't have that in feet. So that's kind of a standard. Yes, sorry, yes, apologies. It's roughly, I presume roughly around that. Yeah, to prevent falls into the ditch. Yes, that was a specific requirement of the local highways authority.
Yes, I think it is actually. I know which part of the agenda we're on. Thank you, Holly. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch about the hedge planting. Would it be along the south side of the ditch, or because that actually might be better for traffic?
So the matter of landscaping specifically is a reserved under the reserve matters. So it wouldn't be under this outline, but the justification outlined in my report was on the basis that it could replacement planting could be secured under the reserve matters application. Again, it's potentially more of a discussion under agenda item 6. However, I can confirm that replacement planting is being proposed. And in terms of its location, it will be to the north of the footpath, only because given highways, this path needs to be visible to oncoming traffic and to make sure it's kind of a more of an urban edge. So usually it's advised against to have a large amount of screening to paths such as this, where they need to be more open.
But there was very little space between the path and the roadwork.
I think that might be because quite a lot of that's still under construction. It does actually broaden out, as you can kind of see on the plan on the screen. It is a lot more narrow towards the site entrance and the show home, but there is more space. And again, it has been reviewed by the trees officer and found to be acceptable. So
Surprised. Very thin trees on the I think.
Christine Ambrose Smith, these are questions to the officer.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you. What is the policy about lighting a cycleway?
So again, this is it's slightly more of a technical matter for the Highways Authority. Given that this is being put forward for adoption, they have their own explicit requirements. Again, it's potentially a reserve matters element because there was a condition imposed upon the original reserve matters for a lighting scheme, which has been found to be acceptable by the Highways Authority and signed off by the council. As Rebecca quite rightly mentioned, these schemes are often subject to minor changes with highways consent, which exist entirely separately from the planning process. So whilst we shouldn't be expecting drastic changes, there can be minor tweaks, usually, particularly given the point raised about the existing column within the path itself. I'm not a highways engineer, but it may be that is slightly relocated if it's found to be in conflict with the highways guidance, but that's not for something that I can really comment on at this stage.
Okay, well, we now move on to debate. So members, it's up to you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. No, to me, it seems a perfectly acceptable replacement design. It seems slightly safer being away from the road. So I think I'm in favour of it. And if you can make a note of that, Chair, I'd gladly propose it.
Right, I've made, no, just a second. Who wants to stand up? I can't hear. I understand, Christine, that you had your hand up before Councillor Jones.
No. I think Christine put her hand up to second it, but if she did,
Yes,
David's
I would-
to speak next.
Yeah, I would be prepared to second
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll have,
Councillor Jones.
but it's generally better to get to come round rather than mumble. Okay, so I'm making a note that councillor Jones is proposing acceptance and councillor Christine Ambrose Smith is seconding it. Now we'll continue with the debate. David Ambrose Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I go back to my previous question to Rebecca. Having done such a good job to almost within 20 feet, 20 yards rather, perhaps, to Yeoman's Way, they've done a very, very good job by upgrading the path to suit both the developer and the residents and the project as a whole, I believe. There is clearly a need to continue that straight line away from the road, the Grange Lane Road, to continue that on to the Yeoman's Way at a similar distance away from Grange Lane as the path is as at the moment, for health and for safety reasons. Because you're going to get children coming from the school, going across there, and they're going to be right on the edge of the road. Whereas the pathway on the other side and going to the school itself is away from the road. So I'm concerned that that should be not all the way down, it's not, but it's just at that point there where a lot of traffic is going to be, that we should actually do a straight line across and not 2 meters away or 3 meters away from Grange Lane itself. I can see no reason why the developer can't do that with the other parties involved. Thank you.
Thank you. We have officer comment requested.
Just a couple of points, which comments members have raised. In regards to safety, you've got to be careful. There's a difference between pedestrian safety and road safety. This scheme, and well, correct me, highways are not saying it's either safer or less safe. It's basically, yes, you're moving pedestrians away from the roads, but you can also argue that because of loss of footpath, the road users driving into Littleport won't recognise it as like the 41-hour road limit and will go faster along that Spit Park Road. So just be careful what weighting you're giving to safety and highway safety, because it might be different pedestrians, cyclists and car users. The second bit in regards to something Councillor Ambrose Smith raised, we can't make a developer buy lands off another developer, basically. The bit of land I think you're mentioning is owned by another party. I know the developer is working for a temporary solution to try and get over that, but that I don't think it would be reasonable to see the developer do a permanent reason. We've already approved that sort of dog leg element on the original outline. Again, it's up to members, but that's obviously my recommendation.
Personally, I have the greatest respect for Highways Department, the County Council, but I don't think they have the unlimited access to correct decision making at all times. And I must say that I share with Councillor David Ambrose Smith a belief, and it is only a belief, but it is much safer for the children to be riding their bikes along a path that has got a fence and then a ditch and about 5 meters separating from the road than having them alongside the road exposed to the particulates from diesel engines. Whatever the County Council say, I cannot move from that opinion, even though that may not be a valid one. So, and I'm also very much of the opinion that it would be safer for people to get on and off a bus that was stopping inside the development as opposed to on a road, it would seem to me. And it would also seem to take the bus service nearer to where people live, as opposed to being on the edge. So in my view, that it's a good thing to have a bus service going in, and it's not a bad thing to have the path as here on the information we have. And I do share with Councillor David Ambrose Smith a real request to get that the path, which is so good, connected up to something the other side. And I'm sure it's not beyond the wit of man and developers to actually cooperate and end up with a better result for the people of Littleport. Now, anybody else want to, councillor Trapp?
Well, just to sort of carry on with that, I mean, we have accepted, well, we're about to accept this path, which makes it much easier for the developers, really, as opposed to what was planned before. So joining it up, as you were saying, and as Councillor David Ambrose-Smith was saying, might be a very good option. I was surprised that it's going that way myself.
Well, we seem to have a shared opinion here, and councillor Jones.
I'm happy to amend my proposal to include the officer to explore, because we appreciate that they cannot do it by any legal bits, to consider, to explore potential for the pathway to be redesignated. If anybody if we can make that fit.
Okay, have we got a way we can make a recommendation? And I think councillor Jones is quite clear that we can't change the sort of the detail technically, but we would, I think he, like me, would like to see this as a recommendation and a request. And if we are being cooperative with the developer, as looks like we may well be, then I would think it would be a quid pro quo to come to some improvement to this path, which is so nearly there.
Members, I think you've got to be careful because you've obviously got recommendation and proposal from the developer in front of you. This is what they've submitted.
Yes.
Working with highways. And this is the acceptable solution from highways and what the developer worked up. They are looking for temporary solutions, but it's only temporary because of timing of when they can connect that last bit of footpath up. If you're seeking something permanent, I've got to be careful with what you're requesting officers to do, because if it's a minor request, we can ask the developer to put another full application in. But that still would be you recommending approval for this getting signed off for approval, and us just asking for, can you do anything extra? So that we could legitimately say no to that, they may do. If you're asking for us to do it formally, you've either got to defer the application so we can ask it formally and then to look into it and come back to us. And the answer from them may be yes or no. But it's also, they got to try and get access over land they don't currently control for a permanent solution. And the red line cannot change as part of an outline. So the only way we can get that done formally is usually for a section 106. We'd have to open up the section 106 again.
I think councillor Jones is not talking about it formally, and I think it would be totally appropriate to ask Rebecca, who's listening to this conversation, what her views are.
I'm a human being, I appreciate, and obviously we all want to do the best that we can. I think the struggle we have is we have an outline planning application that had an approved access drawing which showed this arrangement. So it showed that 2-metre footway going up along in that arrangement along Yeoman's Way. That already includes, as I mentioned before, third-party land, but we know that particular section of land will be dedicated as public highway under Canon Kirk's 278 and section 38 arrangement. I'm a bit concerned because, I mean, I don't know categorically, but Canon Kirk obviously occupied majority of the frontage of that plot, and I don't know what land's being conveyed to who, what is under Canon Kirk's
I
ownership.
don't think
So
we're asking you to, and I understand the officer's reluctance to change the black and white technicalities of it. But what I think that we're saying here as a group of people is we would very much like you to do what you can. We're going to trust you. We're going to give, highly likely, we're going to vote in favour of this. I would like you to take on board the fact that what the members here, and I suspect it's almost universal, councillor Jones.
I was just wondering, the temporary one that's going in, is it going to be tarmac? Is it a tarmac surface that's going to be temporarily placed there? Or
I
is
don't know
it
the
a solid
details of that.
surface, shall we say?
It'll be a solid surface. My technical colleague is liaising with the highways engineer in terms of that. What's acceptable is a solid temporary pathway along that part of the site.
I'm just wondering if, obviously, I'm quite happy to accept this and I appreciate, where we land, but whether we can leave the temporary one in permanently, if that makes sense at the end of it. If Canon Kirkwood are happy to, then, it gives that straight on effect for anybody who wants to use it, but we've still complied with any highways conditions. Would that be a possibility? I mean, it's only as a suggestion, not as a thing like that. I mean, I'm just
I
looking
think
for
the way
alternative
we're
ways.
going to handle this, councillor Jones, is you're going to make a proposal. We're going to look to the officers and say, is this technically possible? And then we're going to vote on it. So, or would you like to, as officers, suggest a form of wording that could meet councillor Jones's request?
Yeah, from what I think the proposal will be is the proposal that the officer set forward is acceptable and you're voting to approve Holly's recommendation. That's the actual recommendation. What you're asking as separate to that is, can offers explore other options outside the recommendation? The approval, if you're going down that route, is set in stone, but you're asking for an informal request. I think what me and the developer are trying to say from our different sides of the fence is they can go and explore it, but they're going to have issues over ownership. If a footpath they can leave there, they've also got to see if it can be adopted, and that goes to the highways. So it might be left, but it might not be adopted. So a future landowner could then rip it out at any point because it's got to be adopted by a public body or someone who's going to leave it in long term. So we can explore it. But I think that's got to be certainly outside of this formal recommendation and decision process.
Okay, so we're going to go to a vote any minute, and how are we going to? Councillor Trapp.
So, want to say that before
I have your permission.
Yes.
Thank you. What I would like to do is to just see if there's a form of words you can put alongside our approval, if it is that, that will express to the applicant what our wishes are.
Chairman, I think I've got what you've said, and I have a form of words which Andrew can tell me. So obviously you would accept the recommendation, which is the approval as it is, absolutely. And then there would be a further, and this would be a further thing, which is aside from the approval, which, and you can tell me if you need this changing, request officers and the developer to explore the potential for improvement of the Yeoman's Lane footpath. And it's only exploring the potential. Is that correct, or did you want something else?
Well,
apart from
I
that?
think it's councillor Jones to say yes.
Well, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, as long as
Okay.
that's outside the formal decision.
That would be outside, that will be, so
make
you
a
will have a
request.
formal decision and then there'll be a second. It'll be a 1 and a 2,
Yeah.
and that will be the 2.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, we do seem to have got there. We have a proposal from councillor Jones, which has been seconded by Christine Ambrose Smith. And are you in agreement with what the discussion we've just had?
Yes, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go now. Those in, and the proposal is to agree to the councillor Trapp. Yes.
I allowed you in, and then I'm full of that. Anyway, I'm just thinking about the bus things, and I think it's certainly a pity that the phase 4 is where the bus is going to end up, and that's right at the end of things. So people will got out of the use of having buses. Is there? I should have asked this of officers actually. Is there a connection, do you think, between the adjoining estate to the east? And so will they be using the bus as well? Is there a big boundary down that?
There are 2 road and footpath connections to the Cannon Kirk development to the east. But that doesn't mean the bus can get through there, and that was one of the concerns we had an outline. But it means obviously people can walk through.
Yeah.
I think it's Reserve Matters, and I think it's the bus turning area, Hackle Road price of occupation of 299th dwelling, or 300. So it does mean you're looking at the bus being provided halfway through the development. So it's not at the end, it's at the halfway point where you've got probably enough people to make the bus worth providing.
Thank you very much. Because I mean, looking at the 680 dwellings plus the associated one next door together probably provide about 1,000. I mean, that's more than some of the parishes that I represent in my ward, where there is a bus service and it is effective.
Yeah, so bus contributions paid on 300th dwelling occupation.
Yeah.
And the bus turning area have provided at the same time.
Right, so
And
there
that's
will,
on the next item on the reserved matters, there's a condition.
who is going to provide buses? Is there going to be in
That's
discussion with
not
someone?
under our control. then.
That's another issue entirely not for us.
Right.
So I'm now going to go, will those who are in favour of the proposal put forward by councillor Jones and seconded by Christine Ambrose Smith with the extra caveat, not caveat, but comment as Tracy has read out. You
An
will-
additional request.
Additional request, yes, that's a good one. So all those in favour, please raise their hands. All those who's against it, please raise their hands. And do we have any abstentions?
One abstention.
So that is,
Carried.
that is carried. And we now move on to item 6. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies. So agenda item 6 concerns the variation to the originally approved reserved matters of the outline to which we have just discussed. This largely concerns the updates to matters of landscaping, car parking, and other minor updates to the plans to reflect what was just proposed under the outline variation. As a refresher, this is the whole site, the aerial view, and then again, the phasing plan. For members' information, the reserve matters focuses on the front lower phases, phase 1, 2, and part of phase 4, which is outlined in blue there. Again, as a refresher, this is the proposed footpath and cycle link, the as approved drawing, the landscaping as proposed to reflect the updates to the shared path. Again, we have some minor changes across the whole development, including the removal of 6 car parking spaces around the local area of play shown in the right-hand image. And in the left-hand image, hatched in red, is the temporary show home extensions to provide marketing suites. Again, some site photos as a refresher. And in this photo here, you can see the temporary garage extension in the black cladding. And on the screen is the main planning considerations. As discussed in the outline, my recommendation for the reserve matters has been put forward on the basis of my recommendation approval of the outline. So I will not go into extensive discussion regarding the pedestrian and cycle access, as that has been discussed. The points remain very much the same. With regards to the bus service provision, and this was touched on quite a lot in our previous discussions, but to refresh, the reserve matters itself, in accordance with the design code which underpins the development and approved as part of the outline, has accommodated an internal spine road which has been designed to accommodate 2 buses passing, as well as its overall design to prevent to ensure safety for pedestrians, cyclists and vehicles. There is a space for a bus stop along the main internal spine road, as well as the provision of an internal bus turning loop as shown in the dashed black line. There is a County Council Hires Transport Team objection on the basis of the bus turning loop. This is due to the loop being provided in what is very likely going to be a private car park associated with the community hub, which is the specific details of which have yet to come forward, and they are a conditional requirement imposed upon the original reserve matters application, as well as part of a later phase. On the basis of the infrastructure that the application provides, the development is considered to provide a suitable opportunity for a bus operator to enter the site. And on that basis, is in accordance with the policies of the local plan and the NPPF. Other smaller matters which are being amended under the application proposal. The loss of visitor parking, a total of 6 spaces in total across the much wider site is considered to be acceptable, given that the development is largely in accordance with the policies of the local plan regarding visitor parking provision. It is noted that these visitor parking spaces are around a local area of play. These local area of plays are meant to be local to the development. It's not expected that vehicle trips will be made to them specifically for their use, as they are proportionate to the development surrounding them. So that's a consideration for their loss there. The landscaping proposed, as shown on the previous slides, has been found to be acceptable by the Council's trees officer and complies with the design code and its mandatory elements. The draining of flooding, again, there's been no concerns raised by any of the statutory consultees. In regards to the character and appearance, this is also found to be acceptable. The temporary garage extensions, a condition has been recommended that they are removed once they are no longer used for the marketing suites on a visual impact basis. A number of smaller concerns were raised by third parties, particularly regarding to NHS contributions, waste and neighbour comments. However, these have been addressed within my report, and limited weight has been attributed to them. On the basis of the development is considered to still provide a high quality development, the alternative path is considered to be acceptable. The proposals still deliver an opportunity for a bus operator to enter and exit the site, and that the development is acceptable in all other respects. The application is recommended for approval on the basis of its compliance with the policies of the East Cambridgeshire Local Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework.
Thank you very much indeed. And again, thank you for the hard work you've put in here. It's obvious it's been extensive. We've now got Rebecca to speak again. Members, are you going to have any questions for the applicant? If you are, I can get them up to the desk. Councillor Wilson.
I'm concerned about this bus loop going out onto private land rather than adopted highway, and the highways development, the highways people are objecting to it. It seems to me a very worrying thing if it suddenly becomes not adopted and the bus driver says, well, hang on a minute, if it's not adopted, am I safe to do it? And they say, well, I won't drive a bus there and I can't turn around, so the bus service won't happen at all. Can't we make sure that it is adopted and doesn't go into a private car park?
Yeah, I share your concerns. I don't think we want to end up where we've already constructed a development to facilitate bus operator, that we end up with them not then coming onto the site. It kind of happened in 2 stages during the Reserve Matters application, where we were in frequent discussions with officers and the highways engineer at County Highways in terms of the feasibility of this loop around the community car park, which was envisioned, set out as part of the design code design for that area. We had a meeting with the commercial manager at Stagecoach, who didn't raise any objections to the fact that it was going to be within private land, and that community centre land will, as part of the Section 106 legal agreement, we are transferring that land to the now Town Council for them to construct a community centre and the car park themselves, because that's what they desire to do. It's unfortunate now that we're at this stage where the Highways Transport Assessment Team has raised this objection, but all I can say is we've got the planning condition under the Reserve Matters that requires us to submit and approve detail for this bus loop. We're more than willing to engage with officers, the bus operator, local highways, to make sure that when it comes to that stage, that we can make the best means possible for a bus operator to service the site within the centre of the site, within that community centre area.
I'm not sure it answers the question. I think it says you're hopeful that you'll be able to get it sorted in the end.
I think
Uh,
that's it. It's something that's going to come up in about 2 years' time. Obviously, it'll be the state of the bus service provision, the operator within Littleport at that time, and us working together, all the parties involved, to make sure that we can deliver something that is suitable for all.
Rebecca, would you stay where you are for a minute? Officers, have you got any comment to make in this? Yes, I've seen that. Officers, have you
Yes,
got anything you wanted
Thank
to
you,
add?
Chair. So just to expand upon what Rebecca said, the bus loop itself, whilst the terminology used in the design code is a loop, ostensibly it doesn't have to come forward as a loop per se. It could be designed as an alternative arrangement. Indeed, the condition is worded to allow for bus turning within the site. As already stated, this turning arrangement hasn't been agreed yet, but it has been shown to be technically feasible. That was a prerequisite before granting the original reserve matters. Extensive discussions were held with highways to ensure that a bus operator could safely and with the appropriate amount of buffers navigate this space if it was to be arranged as a standard car park. It is unlikely to be adopted given the fact that it is likely to form a car park. We can't say that for certain at the moment, but it's obviously a very high chance that it won't be. But even if it were to be adopted, we have the same considerations as earlier, as the council nor the applicant nor the highways authority can require an operator to even enter the site. So even if space is provided, it ultimately is dependent upon the operator, the demand, and ultimately what they want to do. They're a private entity. So the applicants, and this is on the basis of my recommendation, they have appropriately accommodated for a bus to enter, and the specific turning provision is not only included in the design code, in which extensive work went into with a multitude of parties, including the Highways Authority and County Highways Authority, but also this condition. So it's the developer is delivering or trying to deliver a development we have already approved and found to be acceptable. So this scheme put forward doesn't actually change fundamentally what we've already agreed.
Councillor Clapp.
So I was going to carry on with this theme, actually. Is it possible to have a condition that the developers have to provide? I'm sure it is there, but it's going to be reinforced that the developers have to provide a safe route for buses to enter and leave the premises.
So the site has specifically been designed. It's a key requirement of their design code, and the plans which the local planning authority, the council have approved, has been entirely designed to accommodate buses passing, and ultimately will accommodate buses turning. We have not, the application does not seek to vary the condition which requires them to deliver the bus turning loop. The developer has not tried to change that requirement. So yes, they will be required to submit and ultimately deliver a scheme to ensure a bus can turn.
And that will be acceptable to highways as well?
So again,
or the bus operator?
It's going to be because we're not privy to these details at this stage. We've only had indicative plans. When the discussion on these details takes place, highways, county, transport will be very much involved in ensuring that that space is feasible, as advised, to ensure that there was a degree of certainty that it could be achieved. Indicative plans were prepared and discussed under the original reserve matters, in which buffers were designed in accordance with highway specification to ensure that this space was feasible for operators. But ultimately, we can't force an operator to use that space. So
no, but if an operator came back and said it's not quite safe enough, would the plans have to be altered to provide that? If the objection was by the operator that it's not safe or it's not feasible.
So we don't have an objection, from the operator. We have it's county highways at the moment, who are a statutory consultee. So they're raising concerns that it might not be appealing to operators because it's within potentially private land. But again, these this is based upon not having these final details at this stage.
I
Which
think
are-
the councillor Trapp and I share our concern that at a later date, a bus service isn't going onto the site, isn't picking people up and isn't dropping them off. And as long as you can assure me that there will be a facility for a bus to enter the site, drop people off and pick people up, then I would be happy. I don't know about councillor Trapp.
Well, it rather depends on the operator being able to say, this is safe for me, or and therefore it may be marginal tinkering needed later on, which may be, may be that the plans might be approved by highways, but it might not be approved by the operator. And I think that's where we're slightly differing, isn't it?
Yeah, just to jump in, there's two bits to this. What between, because I'd obviously dealt with the outline, design code and reserve matters, and Rebecca there was involved in the reserve matter stage. We designed the entire layout to be safe for a bus to go in and leave the site through design codes and then into reserve matters. The indicative drawing the developer submitted as part of the reserve matters showed a bus could safely turn within that car park. It is safe. That is what is safe designed. If there's some tinkering required to upgrade that safe to make it as safe as possible, that is totally doable at that stage. The difference that we can't control is if a bus operator simply said, it doesn't matter how safe it is, we will not go into that space. That's the bit we cannot control.
I think we're now going to go. Suddenly you've got somebody. Yes, councillor Jones.
Just one bit, considering what we've done to item 5, will the planting scheme need to be given delegated decision-making to planning officers, because there was a tree going to be right through the path where we would like one? That one.
So a landscaping scheme is under consideration under this application. So the applicant has provided a whole suite of updated plans and they are conditioned to be delivered. The condition has kind of a flexible trigger as to when these should be provided, one of which is prior to occupation, but obviously we know that has happened. So there is a flexible wording which states or an agreement with a time frame to be agreed with the local planning authority, which would usually come forward as a discharge of condition. So that's very likely that a new time frame will need to be agreed with the developer applicant through them discharging the condition with an alternative time frame. So to secure its delivery.
Yeah, that wasn't quite the point I was trying to get
Okay.
at. My point was
sorry.
where we were talking about putting this footpath that may or may not exist in the
Yeah.
future, there was a tree stuck right in the middle of it. Did we need to, I didn't know if the tree planting or planting is set in stone or whether you have the flexibility to amend it. And if you don't have the flexibility, should we delegate that flexibility to you in this, if we intend to approve it?
I'm going, depends exactly where that footpath is going to go through, and I think I recognise the you might be mentioning, there's what might have to require is a non-material amendment where we just push the tree slightly one way or another to get it out the space. Non-material amendments is usually fully delegated to officers anyway, because if it isn't non-material, if it goes to committee, it's not non-material because it's something we need to discuss. So if you, as long as you understand that when you make a decision, if the developer did say, yes, we can provide a footpath across there, that tree might have to move very slightly one way or another to get it out away from the footpath. And I think we could do that for a non-material from what you.
Making sure at the stage if we need to.
Okay, David Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, whilst you've got that up, it's funny that it's odd that the path line now, the ownership of the land has actually grown now. So we could have actually moved the path inboard by a metre or so, according to that plan. Anyway, my question was to you, Holly. There's been a very long length of established hedge removed along the front of the site. New hedge planting is proposed by Reserve Matters in agreement with officers. I would like to make sure that there is sufficient hedges planted throughout the site which at least equals the length that is removed. Therefore, could any scheme for planting hedges come back to this committee for approval?
If that was something that members would like to advance, we would need to reword the current condition. Bear with me, I'll find the condition it relates to.
Well, if we approve this, if we're minded to approve it, it would be quite reasonable, and we often do it to give authority
Delegate
to
authority.
the.
It's possible that we could reword condition number 6, which relates to the landscaping, to include a trigger, potentially of a time limit, potentially maybe 3 months from the date of decision for the applicant to provide details of hedge planting as part of the wider soft landscaping condition. My only comment would be that it might not be a whole continuous length of hedge planting, particularly given that the concerns raised earlier regarding the location of this. It's usually a preference for the Highways Authority, particularly this is going to be adopted path, that the path remains unobstructed, so that it is likely that this hedge planting would need to be located to the north, if not elsewhere within the
We
site.
we could delegate final sort of, we
Final
could
condition,
delegate
yeah.
final details to be delegated to the head of planning or something like that. I think we've got one more. I've seen.
Since Rebecca's been waiting patiently and never been asked a question really, I thought I'd ask her a question. It's
I don't think this is a gallantry committee. I think it's a planning one, but continue.
any committee under your auspices will always be a gallantry committee. It's just to do with the path, with the plans we've seen. I'm not sure, maybe it's actually a question to Holly. What happened to phase 2? Are we carrying on that double dual path all the way up to phase 2, the boundary of phase 2? Because I've only seen the plans or the revised plans halfway along.
Oh, okay, yeah, so that in the internal 3-meter cycle footway does go north into, we call it phase 2, it's phase 3 on the phasing plan.
Right, but on the
so-
south side, it's carrying on, is it?
At our access into the
Yes.
site. So everything to the west of the access, that 3-meter cycle footway joins on, that won't be adopted public highway, but that will be going to the district council as part of the public open space
Okay,
transfer.
all right.
Okay, we're now going to
Thank you.
move members. Rebecca, you can go and sit down, and thank you for your attention. Members, we now move on to the debate, and it's up to you. Christine Ambrose Smith was the first.
I think this is more a question to the officer. Can I do that? Just do it. Oh, right.
Exceptionally,
On the site visit, I was concerned about the drainage on the ditch, and I discussed this briefly with Andrew, and he did say that he thought East Cams might be dealing with it, and I understood that it would be surface water from the road that would go into that. Only I'm somewhat concerned by recommendation number 7 on page 4, surface water drainage strategy, because then when I look back to page 12 at the bottom, Ely Group of Internal Drainage Boards, and at the top of page 13, Sorry, my eyes going everywhere. It should be noted that the surface water design for the site has not been consented by the board. All we've received is a consent application to construct a head wash in the catchwater. And yet on the screen, there was a sentence that the internal drainage board had no objections. So I am concerned because we frequently hear of problems regarding flooding as you move down the hill down into Woodford. David probably has been more involved in that side. All right. So am I on the right track regarding this ditch? Is it going to contribute towards flooding going into the internal drainage board concerns?
My understanding is that the ditch is a privately owned ditch, which the Highways Authority, under their standard rights, have are allowed to drain into. With regards to the comments, that a surface water drainage scheme has been signed off for the site under a previous discharge of condition and found to be acceptable. So in terms of the function of the ditch itself to drain the site, it wasn't my understanding that it was being used as part of the wider drainage strategy. The site will benefit from other drainage measures, including another attenuation, a drainage pond. Two drainage ponds within other phases of the site, but as well as other measures. So
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question, councillor Jones.
You had opened it up.
Debate, yes, it's debate. It's debate.
I had opened it up, but then it got the questions to officers got reopened, and being tolerant, we went back. So we're now going forward again onto debate, and it's up to members now to debate. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. No, I mean, obviously I've noted the other comments the other members have made. I think we have to trust in our planning officers to deliver the schemes with the bus turning and the hedge planting and things like that. It would be nice to see a little bit of hedge planting, I think, on just to back up the wooden fencing, because that does tend to rot. And I think if you've got a couple of bushes there, if the fencing goes, at least it gives somebody some indication on the south side of the bit. But given that, I think it generates a good scheme. We've done the best we can, and I'm again happy to propose accepting the officer's recommendations.
Yes, I've got councillor Every.
Yes, I would like to second that, if I may. I think this is a very well prepared report. It seems that the developers and the planning department have worked really, really closely to get the best possible scheme. And I will applaud all of them for working so hard. I think this is going to be a really good scheme, and I would really like to support this. And I also agree that I think we have to have the faith in our officers that they will put together a plan that will be acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, more debate. Did I see your hand? Yes, councillor Wilson.
I'm still a bit concerned about this bus turning area. And I can't see why, if we've changed what we said about this original footpath at the Grange Road thing, why we can't say that we're not happy with that area being a car park. Why not make it a road, and then there won't be a problem about going into a car park or not? You know, there seems to be other car parking spaces available, and they probably would be able to put car park in the centre of this thing, but the road itself ought to be made into a road rather than pretend that it's a car park because we've said it was a car park originally. So can't we, if we're changing something on a previous
We
application?
are on debate, councillor Wilson, rather, are you on a, it seems to me you're trying to turn the clock back and go back to questions to officers.
It's not a question, it's just I would like to see that we change the thing to being a road, so there's no question of it being not able to be driven in by a bus.
I think what we'll do, we have a proposer and a seconder. I think when we get a little bit further along, we may, one of them may agree to having a sort of caveat on their their proposal, if that's all right. So we continue with the debate. David Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, Gareth, Councillor Wilson's problem, the car park is actually for the community hub. So it is an important element to be where it is. So it's important for it. So hopefully that helps you. Otherwise, where would they go? Regarding, I will say the hedges and I will say the officers, I am concerned that we see something in writing as quickly as possible about these hedges. There is a lot of well-established, repeating what I said before, well-established hedge has been removed. And I'd like to see where it's going to go. I really would. I appreciate it's not going to be another quarter of a mile length of hedge. I appreciate that. But you're going to lose some more, I suppose, down the other end, perhaps not. But it would be nice to see exactly where it's going to go. That's the only concern I have.
I think this is an example of the local member having intimate knowledge of the site, and which is an advantage to us.
It's also, Chair, if I may, it's also the residents, knowing what the residents think, the current residents think about what's actually happened with that particular part of that particular quarter of a mile stretch of road. They were promised lots of things would get better. And it's a wonderful site, don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful site, but we have said that the hedges will be re-established in some way or other. And that's just what I would like to see. And that's what the residents would like to see and like to know what we're going to get.
Okay, members, we have a proposer and a seconder. And we also have what I consider to be important comments from the local member. Councillor Trapp.
I'm fearful, but you always are about my interjection. I am slightly worried about the bus, and I think there could be problems with the car parking and the car parking actually stopping buses actually turning, because there will be odd parking always. People will always say, "Oh gosh, my car park's full," but it doesn't matter if I go here because I need the bus. Well, at least they recognize it's a bus. So that's one thing. I was also slightly concerned, but I don't know if it's the right thing to bring up, is the bins. I think the bin storage at where we were at the beginning of the access, is that our lorries going to be all going all the way up those roads? I think that's been solved, but it seemed a lot for the bin storage to be by the access road. There's an awful lot of trundling by black bins or any bins from the residents along that road to that storage space. So I'm not sure about this vote. I'm still abstaining about it.
Okay, well, we go to Councillor David Ambrose Smith. Are you wishing to make some comment to go alongside what looks like being an approval?
I'm happy, Chair.
You're happy to, as it stay as it is?
I'm happy.
Okay, right. So we have a proposal.
Chair, sorry, just to interrupt, just to make sure I understand from members. If you go with, just make sure I understand what members are voting for. If you go for exactly what you've, officer recommendation, the landscape plan is being approved under that recommendation. If you're seeking for potential changes, then you're going to have to give delegated powers to officers to rework that condition. It's just so I know what's being put forward as your decision.
I questioned myself, Chair, when I said I was happy, because I haven't been happy since '92. So I do apologise, officers. You're quite right. I know you'll come up with a good scheme. That was my point of being happy. You'll come up with a good scheme, and that's important to me and the residents, that we actually get, you know, what we said we was going to get. Hedging, a good scheme. That's all I'm asking for. I will leave it to yourselves to get on with it.
Okay, so I think we've got to a stage where I'm asking you, Councillor Jones, as the proposer, and Councillor Every, are you suggesting that we adopt the officer's recommendation, but detail, but as a second item, we delegate the
Well, well,
details
landscape conditions to
to
officers.
the planning manager
Yes, or plan team leader.
or the planning department.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that,
I'm happy with that amendment.
okay, so with that amendment, members, will you raise your hand if you are in favour? Will you raise your hand now if you are against? Will you raise your hand now if you are abstaining? Thank you. I think that's-
Carried.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. So if those of you involved with the cases in Littleport, if you'd like to leave now, you're welcome to stay. And thank you for your assistance. Okay, we now move on to item number 7, and Richard Fitzjohn is the officer. In your own time, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 7 seeks outline planning permission for the construction of 4 detached 2-bed bungalows, new access and associated works at site west of 45 East Fen Road in Isleham. The application seeks approval for the details of access, layout and scale only. Matters of appearance and landscaping are reserved. This map shows the location of the application site outlined in red. The development envelope boundaries for Isleham are outlined in the thick black lines. East Fen Road is located immediately to the south of the application site, and you can see the location of existing dwellings near the application site as well. Members have viewed the application site and the surrounding area on the site visit. This slide shows an aerial image of the application site and the immediate surroundings. This slide shows some photos of the application site. And this slide provides details relating to the access, layout and scale of the proposal. The proposal is for 4 detached 2-bed bungalows. The proposal would create new access on the north side of East Fen Road, leading to a private shared road and car parking for the proposed dwellings. The layout of the proposed dwellings follows the general pattern of development along the north side of East Fen Road, as you can see on the image on the left-hand side. The details of the proposed landscaping are indicative only at this stage. This slide shows the floor plans of the proposed bungalows. This slide shows the indicative details of appearance, demonstrating what the proposed bungalows could potentially look like. In terms of the site history, a separate planning application seeking outline permission with all matters reserved apart from access for 4 dwellings on this site was refused by the Planning Committee in April 2020. The application was determined when the council could not demonstrate that it had a 5-year housing supply, and it was refused for the reasons on the screen. Summarised, they are refusal reason 1, the proposed development cumulatively with proposed housing allocations and other approved residential development within Isleham would result in an unsustainable amount of residential development due to a lack of infrastructure, employment, retail and public transport within the village. And number 2, the proposed development would create an intrusive urbanising impact upon the surrounding rural landscape, eroding the predominantly rural character of the countryside setting, causing detrimental harm to the character and amenities of the area and interrupting views over open countryside. The main considerations relevant to the determination of this application are the principle of developments, residential amenity, visual amenity, the historic environment, highway safety, parking and public rights of way, biodiversity and trees, and flood risk and drainage. Turning to the principle of development, this slide shows the location of the application site outside of the Isleham development envelope and therefore within the countryside. The proposal is located outside of the development envelope and is not one of the exceptions listed within policy growth 2 of the local plan. The proposal is also not located at one of the free market towns where growth is directed to by growth 2 of the local plan. The location of the proposal is therefore contrary to policy growth 2 of the local plan. In addition, policies 1A and 2 of the Isleham neighbourhood plan restrict development outside of the defined Isleham development envelope to specific categories of exception development listed within those policies. The proposal is not for any specific categories of development that can be permitted as an exception outside of the defined development envelope for Isleham. The location of the proposal is therefore contrary to policies 1A and 2 of the Isleham neighbourhood plan. Although policy 1B of the Isleham neighbourhood plan is supportive of proposals which provides 2-bed dwellings, meet the needs of an ageing population and are suitable for lifetime occupation, this policy does not specify that such proposals are acceptable as exception developments outside of the Isleham development framework. The council can demonstrate an adequate 5-year housing land supply. The proposal is located outside of the development envelope of Isleham. The proposal is not located at one of the free market towns where growth is directed to by policy growth 2 of the local plan. The type of development is not listed as an exception in policy growth 2 of the local plan or policies 1A and 2 of the Isleham neighbourhood plan. The proposal is therefore contrary to policy growth 2 of the local plan and 1A and 2 of the Isleham neighbourhood plan. In respect to residential amenity, the proposal demonstrates acceptable separation distances, plot sizes and garden sizes. There's no significant overbearing, overshadowing or overlooking impacts or any other significant residential amenity impacts. The full residential amenity impacts could be assessed at reserve matter stage. In terms of visual amenity, the proposal would result in 4 new dwellings on the edge of Isleham and within the countryside. By virtue of its location, the proposal would create an intrusive urbanising impact upon the surrounding rural landscape, eroding the predominantly rural character of the countryside setting and causing detrimental harm to the character and amenities of the area. Dwellings in this location would interrupt views over open countryside and would contribute to the erosion of the rural character of this part of Isleham. It's therefore considered that the proposal would harm the rural character of the area, contrary to policies ENV1 and ENV2 of the local plan. The full visual amenity impacts could be assessed at a reserve matter stage. Highway safety, parking and public rights of way. The proposed new vehicular access is to the north side of East Fen Road. The local highway authority consider the proposal to be acceptable in highways terms subject to conditions. The county's definitive map team have no objection to the application, and there is sufficient space for car and cycle parking provision within the site. In terms of biodiversity and trees, the council's trees team during the course of this application has requested an arboricultural impact assessment prior to determination of this application. The council's tree team previously considered that there was no significant arboricultural issues to refuse the previous application. On this basis, it's not considered reasonable to require an AIA for the current application, and there would be no significant arboricultural issues that would warrant refusal of this application. In terms of biodiversity protection and net gain, the County Wildlife Trusts have reviewed the ecological impact assessment that was submitted with the application. They consider that it covers all the relevant issues and makes appropriate avoidance, mitigation, enhancement recommendations. In accordance with the ecological impact assessment and the County Wildlife Trust recommendations, it's considered that adequate biodiversity protection and enhancement could be secured by conditions. In terms of flood risk and drainage, the site is within flood zone 1, where the principle of residential development is acceptable in flood risk terms. Details of foul and surface water drainage could be secured by condition. So turning to the plan and balance, it is considered that the proposed development would not result in any significant harmful impacts in respect of residential amenity, the historic environment, highway safety, and the public right of way, biodiversity and trees, or flood risk and drainage. However, the proposed development is not for any of the specific categories of development that can be permitted as an exception outside of the defined development envelope for Isleham. Therefore, the principle of development is considered to be unacceptable, contrary to the locational strategy for development within Isleham, as set out within Policy Growth 2 of the local plan and policies 1A and 2 of the Isleham Neighbourhood Plan. In addition, 4 dwellings within this edge of settlement location would create an intrusive urbanising impact on the surrounding rural landscape, eroding the predominantly rural character of the countryside setting, causing detrimental harm to the character and amenities of the area, interrupting views over open countryside and contributing to the erosion of the rural character of this part of Isleham. Therefore, the proposal would cause harm to the rural character of the area contrary to policies ENV1 and ENV2 of the local plan. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. We've got 2 speakers, Anthony Smith, the agent, and Mike Petty, the client. Are you here? Would you like to come up and speak? You've got 5 minutes between you. Turn the microphone on if you would, and start in your own time.
Chairman and members of the committee, I'm standing here as a local person. I really feel there's no provisions in Isleham or any surrounding village for the elderly. All developments are 3, 4 and 5 bedroom, nothing small, so which are not suitable. So we're proposing 2 bedroom. There's a need for 2 bedroom. So I would ask you please to consider the proposal. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Chairman and members, for allowing me to speak this afternoon. This application seeks permission for the erection of 4 2-bedroom bungalows. The previous planning application on this site had the full support from the planning officer. However, it is important to note that this scheme was for outline permission only, with all matters reserved. The proposal is committed to providing 2-bedroom bungalows by committing to access, layout and scale. I know that from previous planning committee meetings, there is a great demand for this type of development. This is also the case for 2 generations of my own family who insist I provide 2-bedroom bungalows in the village, as there's no choice for them to downsize. The application has been recommended for refusal of being contrary to Growth 2 of the local plan and policies A1 and 2 of the Isleham Development Plan. At present, Growth 1 and Growth 2 are considered out of date and therefore should not be fully relied on. The Isleham Neighbourhood Plan Policy 1A housing growth states land outside the development envelope is defined as open countryside, where residents would normally only be allowed for affordable housing to meet the local needs on sites well related to the village and in circumstances set out in Policy 1B. Circumstances set out within 1B state that proposal for residential use should provide a mix of house types and sizes to help to ensure a diverse community resides within the village. Specifically, proposals which provide 2-bedroom dwellings meet the needs for an ageing population and suitable for a lifetime occupation will be supported. Development proposals on sites outside but immediately adjacent to the development envelope may be considered as a rural exception site, where the proposal is to enable a majority of affordable housing. Where development is proposed on a rural exception site, it must be demonstrated that it meets an identified need which cannot be met within the development envelope, and conditions may be implemented prioritising occupiers with a strong local connection. Having reviewed the policies, we feel that the proposal provides the 2-bedroom dwellings that have been identified as a need for the village and that no other developer is meeting these needs within the sites within the framework. This will be a great opportunity to provide a much needed 2-bedroom bungalow development within a built up area with great links to the school, shop, pubs and allotments. Policy 2 of the Isleham Development Envelope, land outside of the development envelope is defined as an open countryside where, in addition to any proposals relating to the rural exception sites, A1, development would normally only be allowed for. Again, The policy stated that normally development is only allowed for the above. However, this is not a normal case. We are providing a scheme of 2-bedroom bungalows, which is highlighted within the policy 1B and states it will be supported. We understand that the development is outside the development framework. However, the development envelope borders the boundary. The site is situated between residential development with dwellings either side, and as such, it's a simple infill development which would follow linear form. An ecological assessment has been carried out on the site and extended phase 1 habitat survey. The trees at the front of the site have been assessed and have been considered to be low condition. This is also confirmed by the previous tree officer stated in the officer's report. All the mitigation measures from Green Willows will be complied with, and extensive landscaping scheme will be put forward. Our client is also committed to providing an extensive landscaping scheme to the land behind. There's 8 acres behind. We're looking to even put more planting in that as well, which will provide a great net gain for biodiversity. This proposal makes much more use of the site and would make a modest but important addition to the needs of housing within the village. Single-storey dwellings would be in keeping with this area and provide high level of demand due to limited bungalows within the area. No 2-bedroom bungalows are on the market in Isleham at present. A new development along Borden Road for 9 bungalows are on the market, but they're all 3+ bedrooms and on the market for 655 grand, which is we're not affordable. Do you want me to stop? I've got a couple of more sentences.
You can continue for a little while.
Cheers. This proposal would support local services and will provide some economic benefit during construction. Phase 7 of the NPPF explains that the purpose of the planning system is to contribute to the achievement of sustainable development, described as being changed for the better. Decisions should apply a presumption in favour of sustainable development. This scheme does not cause any harm and will provide a much needed development. I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, members, we have questions. Mr. Jones, you're already on the list.
I've got a couple of questions, if I may, Chair.
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Obviously, you've mentioned quite a lot about the bungalows and saying none available on the market at the moment. Have you got any data on how many 2-bedroom bungalows are available in Isleham as a whole?
Yeah, so I look every day. So there's one on the market at the moment, which is already existing bungalow, 2-bedroom, and it's opposite the church. But
more than that, I mean, obviously, it's a slightly depressed time for marketing really at the moment. So rather than just what's available, do you have any figures on the available quantity of 2-bedroom bungalows within a whole of Isleham as a percentage or anything like that? Do you?
No, but like I said, whenever I've looked I've got family in the village and they've always wanted to downsize, but there's nothing that comes available. Nothing becomes available.
Okay. Second one would be, I mean, you've obviously poo-pooed the £650,000 ones. Have you got a guide price on what you would expect your ones to be going for?
I don't have a guide price, but I would expect something between 275 to 375, something like that. Whereas those other ones, I mean, you have to be doing well to be afford 650.
I know, I can appreciate that. It's just giving us a guideline what you're calling affordable, and you know, if you're looking to overturn on anything like that.
That one on the market at the moment, that is going on the market. It's on the market for 300.
Right. Thank you.
An idea.
And one final one. I'm just a little concerned about the layout. I don't know if you could get the layout. Is it Gav? Just up. As I recall this morning, on the bottom left-hand corner of the behind the duck pond, there was quite a large tree. Looked quite impressive. Didn't look overly in bloom. On here, there's no canopy from the drawings that I can see for a large tree that was stuck behind it. I don't think other members remember there was quite a big sort of tree behind. Is that looking to be removed? Is that
no, that's outside the development framework. That's not inside the red line. So that will be retained, and that would have been highlighted in the report which was done by the ecologist.
Sorry, yeah, I was just looking on that.
Yeah,
there's no canopy sort of within
I think
the
what's
drawing, so
happened,
just
I
gave me
think
some
you can
concern.
see the stem there, can't you? If you look at the pond at the back of that, there's a big circle with a diameter. So that's that area there. Does that state that? Well, that is, yeah.
All right, so now the others have got a canopy sort of
yes, that's it, yeah.
bloom around them. So
yeah, that's
so
the
just
only
concern.
one of real merit, that tree. But also speaking with the developer, they were actually asking about contributing to the actual pond to make it look even better than what it currently is.
More of a pit than a pond, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing, and it's classed as a interest, but, well, yeah.
No, that's it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Councillor Trapp, this is questions to the applicant.
Yes. But I am.
Nope, me.
Listen, and, are you aware, are you familiar with the Iceland local plan?
I am, yeah.
Sorry, neighborhood plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. So how much area is there available there for development in Iceland?
What do you mean by how much is
Well, how
available?
much, the neighborhood plan designates certain areas for development.
But none of them have been put forward, have they?
I don't know, I'm asking
No.
you.
Well, there is land available, but there's no real land that's going to be worth anything in that area. I mean, what we, I mean, I don't know what's out there at the moment, pretty much.
Okay,
Put
all
it
right,
that
thank
way.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got Mr. Richard Ratcliffe from the parish council. I think you know the system, sir, and you turn your mic on and away you go.
Good afternoon. I'm Richard Radcliffe, Chair of Iceland Parish Council. Whilst always a pleasure to attend your meetings, my council considers that this application is a waste collectively of all our resources. A similar application was made on this site, was objected to by my council and refused by this committee in 2020. Since that time, Iceland has adopted its neighbourhood plan, which clearly shows the site to be outside the development envelope. The applicant sets out in his statement in detail the relevant parts of the neighbourhood plan and policies for your council and the MPPF. That statement states, the proposal is a simple infill plot between an existing cluster of properties and provides 2-bedroom bungalows, which will meet the needs of an ageing population and are suitable for lifetime occupation, which accords with Iceland Neighbourhood Plan Policy 1A and 1B. It then goes on to conclude the erection of 4 private detached 2-bedroom bungalows within this location would have relatively little effect on the landscape or character of the area and would provide a housing scheme which is needed within Iceland, which accords with national and local planning priorities. And that is clearly wrong. This is not an infill plot. There are no properties immediately to the west or east of the site. It is outside the development envelope and it doesn't accord with Iceland's neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan defines this area as open countryside, where residential development will normally only be allowed for affordable housing to meet local needs on sites where the people are well related to the Iceland village, and those circumstances are set out in our policy 1A. In 1B, we go on to say development proposed on sites outside of but immediately adjacent to the development envelope may be considered as a rural exception site, where the proposal is to enable the majority of affordable housing. Where development is proposed on a rural exception site, it must be demonstrated that it meets an identified local need, which cannot be met within the development envelope, and conditions may be implemented prioritizing occupiers with a strong local connection. Well, I'm afraid this application clearly doesn't meet any of those criteria. The neighbourhood plan, so overwhelmingly supported by our community, aims to ensure that the demand for new housing is to be justified, carefully planned, and will have a positive impact on the village's distinctive character and semi-rural environment. This is clearly not the case, as shown in the report before you. This proposal has unacceptable impacts and are contrary to our policies within the neighbourhood plan. as the site is not within the development, nor is this proposal for affordable housing. Our neighbourhood plan was developed to help good development within our village. It is not to enable the intrusive urbanising impact upon the surrounding rural landscape, lessening our predominantly rural character and its countryside setting. This causes detrimental harm to the character and amenity of our village. These dwellings will interrupt views over open countryside and would contribute to the erosion of the rural character of this part of Isleham. The council therefore fully supports your officer's recommendations to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just stay where you are for a minute, please. Members, questions for the parish council chairman. Christine.
Good afternoon. What are your views on, say, a community land trust that might provide a couple of affordable, small, single-storey dwellings?
We have actually an almshouse charity within the village, and at a recent application of yours, you approved development of 45 affordable homes in our village with Havebury Housing Association and the Almshouse Charity, which is the Lady Peyton Trust. So in effect, we've got a community land trust already existing within the village because we already have a housing charity, as it were, which is using its land to develop affordable housing for those people in need in our village.
Can I come back on that?
Yes, please do.
That sounds very commendable, but how many of those properties in your charitable trust are single story, for instance?
I haven't got the details directly in front of me, but a proportion of those properties are bungalow accommodation.
I have mobility issues. I couldn't live in a house. We live on single story. So obviously this is close to my heart. And I don't believe I'm sort of alone in this. You know, it just seems a shame that, you know,
well, I would
this
point,
is outside your neighbourhood plan.
I fully understand where you're coming from. All the properties that you have approved are aimed to be available at affordable rate or on an affordable basis. They are not market housing.
Councillor Trapp.
I'm posing to you the same question as I posed to the agent or the developer. How much sort of land is there available in the neighbourhood plan in Isleham for development?
We identified in the neighbourhood plan the land that you have recently approved for the affordable housing within the village. And there are other plots of land within the village which also have got approvals, but the developers yet haven't built them out. Some of them have been outstanding for many years.
So you would say there's quite a bit of space for development, or not?
I would say there is adequate space for our village. If you recall, our local housing requirement is 0. We've actually gone beyond our local housing requirement in our neighbourhood plan through the further development of our village, which is seeing considerable growth with the Bloor Homes development of 125 homes and the other outstanding approvals which haven't yet been fully developed or even started.
Thank you.
Have we got any more questions for Councillor Radcliffe? No. Thank you very much, Councillor. And we now have Councillor Julia Huffer, who's the District Council Ward member.
Thank you, Chair and Committee, for allowing me to address you this afternoon. This application should never have come this far. It's outside the development envelope and forms no part of the Isleham Neighbourhood Plan. Isleham, as a small community, has done its bit in terms of development, with 120 homes on the Bloor site, plus 17 more dwellings, 10 bungalows and others to come. The village is not well served by local transport services, and the primary school children are already being sent to the shade in Soham as the school is at capacity. This is an outline planning application and therefore is seeking planning permission in principle. There is nothing, should this application be granted, a detailed application could easily come in for 4 houses, 2-story, absolutely nothing. I saw it happen in Fordham, where the developer promised in Arthur's Way, promised 5 affordable 2-bedroom bungalows. The development was sold and the developer came back in for 4 large 685, £900,000 chalet bungalows. So we're talking about development in principle here. Developers will promise the earth and the moon. They think they can get planning permission because then they can come back with detailed and demand what they want and get what they want. The parish council, I believe, have eloquently set out their case for refusal, and I would ask you, the committee, to take heed of the harm that this development will cause. I thought any applications outside the development envelope and contrary to the neighbourhood plan would not be looked on favourably. And I've sat in this committee and heard that given as grounds for refusal. So I would ask the committee to refuse this application, not just on those grounds, but on the grounds of the visual impact, intrusion into the countryside. Islesham's infrastructure is groaning at the seams and simply cannot take any further development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hopper. Members, questions for Councillor Hopper?
I'll go for it if I'm allowed to.
Councillor Trapp.
Do you think there's sufficient provision in the neighbourhood plan for Isleham for development? I know that the council, I'm sorry, I forgot your second name, but the parish councillor said that they're already exceeded what is needed.
Richard Radcliffe, who's the chair of Isleham Parish Council. Yes, I do believe, I mean, the village is tiny, that it cannot take any more development. The roads are falling apart, the school is full, that there are, people have just been looking, there are 2 bungalows, I believe, on the market in Isleham, the village itself, but there are 4 in Isleham Marina valued under 300,000. So there are properties, single-story properties within the area, but they may not be actually in the village.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for Councillor Hopper? No, thank you very much indeed. Now, Officer, have you got any comments you'd like to make?
Nothing further, Chair.
And members, have you got any questions for the officer? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, two questions, please. Right, the first one, I think the developer said something about growth 1, has it been out of date amongst what he was saying? Can you do you recall him saying that? He said it, but I'm just wanting to make sure it wasn't.
Yeah, Richard's in his report has explained, while Growth 1 is out of date, Growth 2 is not out of date. And there's been a lot of appeal decisions that have reflected exactly that. The short answer, because obviously Rich is going into full details on page 14 and 15 and 16 of his report, is if it's outside the village framework in a non-market settlement, so not Soham, Littlepool and Ely, the principle of any development outside the village framework, unless it's like affordable housing, house for a farm, that sort of thing, it should be refused. The neighbourhood plan has obviously gone through the due process, it's gone through residents, it's gone through inspectors, etc., and it's been adopted last year. And again, this hasn't allocated that site. It has nothing in those policies to allocate that site. So again, this should be refused on that ground, and that's very much in date. That's a very new neighbourhood plan.
Yep.
The only, because again, infill, there have been some inspector decisions where it's very clearly an infill, like literally it's a plot surrounded by houses, but technically it's still countryside. Inspectors have said, look, it's no longer fundamental countryside allowed development on that site, but this is very much not infill. This is still very much field.
Fabulous, thank you. And my second question, I was somewhat surprised to see this one make its way to committee. given the fact that it was recommended for refusal, and it was outside the development envelope. I'm just wondering if you can answer why actually it was brought to committee, because my concern is that, as councillor Huffer said, that there's a neighbourhood plan in place, there's a development, we've got a local plan. I would have thought we might be signaling to other people that actually, even though all those things are in place, we can still bring them to committee, take your chance. I'm just wondering why it actually came before committee.
I'll go and everything. There's the council's constitution, which is what has to go to committee, what doesn't have to go to committee. And there's a small part in that which says, and it depends how you read it. It would depend, and Richard taking it perfectly reasonable way of reading it, is if it's a departure, which this application is, it should go before planning committee. So that's why Richard has brought it, to make sure it's in accordance with the constitution. General practice of the department is, because it would be refused in accordance with the local plan, therefore it's not a departure, not all officers would bring it to committee. Again, members, you've got this application for you. If you believe it's the correct decision, refuse it, refuse it. If you obviously think there's grounds to approve it, then obviously you'd have to explain that in your overturn.
As long as you're clear, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, members, we're now at debate. Councillor Wilson, very quickly, and then Councillor Tran.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
This plan is clearly against the neighbourhood plan. We've encouraged villages and parishes to look hard and do a neighbourhood plan. It involves a great deal of work from the parish and all the people in it, and they make a big effort to do it. We encourage you to do it because it's so important that we use the local knowledge and advice of the people who actually live in a place. And this is outside it, and therefore I don't think we should have the slightest doubt in refusing it because it doesn't conform with the neighbourhood plan. So I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Wilson, I was going to personally propose this, and from the chair, I will make a note. We will go through debate, but can I accept that you would be wishing to second that? Okay, right, you are. So we've now got Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chair. I would very much support what you just said, Councillor Wilson. And that's why I mentioned why I'm my surprise at seeing it come before committee. And for all the things that you've just said, Councillor Hunt, and obviously the chair of the parish council, we encourage communities to spend years developing their neighbourhood plans because of this reason. The developer talked about, growth one was out of date. It was affordable, but not really in the true sense. And it's outside the development envelope, well, it's adjacent to the development envelope. Lots of ifs and buts. And as Councillor Huffer said, and we all have seen this, if it's an outline plan application, doesn't mean that's what's going to be delivered at all, no matter what the developers say. And that's obviously a way to get things approved. And then the next minute, we've got a new planning committee that comes back with no bungalows. So I'm very much in support of the officer here and would very much agree with refusing this application, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. I think it's fair to say something about the neighbourhood plan, that it is actually from the whole community. Not only is there a consultation with the community, and then the comments received by the community are incorporated in the neighbourhood plan, but also it is subject to a vote by the whole community, by the parish. And therefore it is in a lot of measure of what the desire is of the community. So I think we should, anything that actually is against the neighbourhood plan, I think should be dismissed. And I too was surprised it came to this committee actually in the first instance anyway. It was, I thought, something that, having read through this, should be refused by the officers.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this is a nice little development, ideal for the location. Unfortunately, for reasons expressed by Isleham Parish Council, I have to go with the officer recommendations.
Right, I've got no one else left on the speakers list for debate. I proposed that we agree with the officer's recommendation. This clearly is, I agree with everything that Councillor Trapp has said about the neighbourhood plans and how much work and effort that the villagers and all the villagers put into this. And I think it would be a total betrayal of the hard work of the parish councils if this was given permission, and it is of course outside the boundary line. So my proposal, and that's seconded by Councillor Wilson. Is there anything that I'm saying that you don't agree with? No. So we'll go to a vote, and the recommendation is members are recommended to refuse the application for the following reasons. And I propose that we refuse them for the two reasons that the officer has detailed. So will those in favour please raise their hands? That's unanimous, is it? Yes, so there'll be. And if any wish to leave, they can do now. Councillor Huffer. We're about to move on to item number 8, which is Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go into all the details, but obviously happy to answer questions. I think the main thing to take away is stats in February remained overall high. The sort of applications being submitted are following the usual pattern of applications going up in January and February. Members will see the appeals that have been won and lost. The land area of the Rectory, Main Street, Little Downham was for 4 or 5 dwellings, so that was good, that got dismissed. And the only other update I had to give, as I've been also very personally involved with it, the Seneca public examination is now over. So now it goes, we have to wait up to 3 months for the inspector to make a recommendation, and then it's up to another 3 months for the Secretary of State to make their decision. So we should hear within 6 months what the decision is that by the Secretary of State. Any questions?
Members, any questions for Andrew? I would like to make a comment. I've heard nothing but praise for the planning department reference the land at the rear of the Rectory, Main Street, Little Downham, and my understanding is that the officers who attended were a real credit to this authority, and therefore thanks should be paid to them.
I will pass it on.
Any members, any more? This is the last meeting we're going to have in this chamber, because in 3 weeks' time it will be used for the election, and goodness knows what that will produce, and goodness knows where we'll be. But we have one more meeting in St Mary's in 3 weeks' time. So I now close the meeting and look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks' time. And lunch will be in St Mary's. I think there's some tissues in the toilet if you like.